Hello there, welcome to Genessis Models and welcome to March's questions and answers. We're just going to jump straight in here, and what we have starting off, we have Andrew Parker. Now Andrew Parker asks, hi, wondering if you could help me out. I do see your videos about compressors and airbrushes. I've been looking for a kit online, and to be honest, I'm finding it hard to know what to go for and where's the best place to buy them. I've got about £125 budget. Could you help me with that? Now obviously he's somebody who's getting into doing some airbrushing, and we sort of got a bit of a budget here. Now when it comes to buying compressors and airbrushes, I do have quite a few videos out there which goes in more detail. We have the beginners airbrushing Genesis Models, which is about 3 episodes long, and there's a load of stuff about just getting into airbrushing, the basics of it, even a slight bit of a buying guide in there. But just to quickly recap, when it comes to compressors for a beginner, pretty much the cheapest you're probably talking about is around about £80. You could go on eBay and you can get one of these. The biggest sort of buying guide when it comes to these is always make sure it comes with a tank. When it comes to compressors, if you don't have a tank, basically when you press down the trigger for air, the compressor comes on, right? So without a tank, basically the compressor can overheat, and you sort of blow all your seals and stuff, and they don't really last that long. So it's definitely a big yes to going out and getting a compressor. And I do believe there isn't much price difference between a tank and a compressor without a tank. Basically what the tank does is it stores the air, so when you press down the trigger, it has to empty the tank first before the compressor comes on, and what that basically does is stops the compressor from overheating and blowing all the seals and stuff. When it comes to actual airbrushes, I mean, really, airbrushes, you could be looking around spending around about £120, but once you've brought one of these nice kind of proper Harder and Sternbeck, a Water, those kind of manufacturers, you buy one of these and you've brought one for life. I mean, that's it, you're done. You've brought an airbrush. You don't need to really get another one, really. But for to get into it, right? Because I know going off and buying maybe a £200 compressor and a £120 airbrush, it does get quite expensive, and potentially a few of the other little bits and bobs. But I do recommend Vida. Here is a Vida airbrush. It cost me around about £20. You can get them off eBay. Yeah, I mean, they're not the best. I have looked inside these. The seals are a little bit sort of pants, but to get you going, and being so cheap, it does get you going in doing an airbrushing before you sort of really dive in and go for the more expensive airbrushes. As well as it does make for a good secondary airbrush. Maybe you sort of want one colour in one cup, and it might be handy to have a second airbrush where you can put a different colour in the other. It's one of them. It's a good airbrush for the price that it is. Next up we have Freezenator. He's got a question. I've got a question for you. Model making is a pretty safe hobby, but do you have any dangerous hobbies, right? And what would you recommend to someone looking for a bit of danger in their life? And he goes on to say, you did say to ask anything. That's right. I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be model related. You can ask me a question. In all honesty, I don't really have any dangerous hobbies. I do like to play around with cars, in all honesty, and I do that quite regularly. I mean, the dangers there is nothing more than not jacking up a car right and getting squashed or something like that. But admittedly, I do have a friend who does do scuba diving, and it's something I've kind of been like, oh, I wouldn't mind getting into that. And that's sort of basically a bit of a dangerous hobby. It is quite interesting to hear these stories about kind of going around the world, and you dive in these locations where they've got like old World War II warships and stuff, and you can go inside them and everything, which, as you say, can be quite dangerous depending on the situation and things that could possibly go wrong and everything. Things could go bad quite quickly. But apart from that, it's probably the most dangerous hobby I'd be thinking about doing. Back in the day when I was in the army, going up mountains and all sorts of stuff like that, yeah, but I think really the dangerous hobbies are sort of behind me now. Next we have Stevo MTB1. His question is, hi Bobby, my question is, after looking at all the paints you have, I can't see any Revell paints. Is there any reason for this? Right, when it comes to paints, I do actually have some Revell paints just here. In fact, there's a couple of paints that maybe you might not have seen. I think I've only used this once in a video, the Humbrol ones. Really, there's nothing wrong with the Revell paints, in all honesty. There is no real reason other than space. I mean, as you can see behind me, there is a absolute load of paints. I've got all sorts from Tamiya, Vallejo, what's that, a can. We've got Games Workshop at the back there as well. It's just space, really. I've actually even got Hanans. I mean, you've seen the Hanans range probably in quite a few videos, but I can't fit them on the shelf. They're actually in a box underneath my desk, and that's the only reason. If I was to go off and sort of, you know, get the full range of Humbrol, get the full range of Revell, I mean, I'd have another load of paints where I wouldn't be able to put them, and that's the only reason. And in all honesty, just as a quick sort of tip as well, when it comes to paints, over the years that I've been doing this and all my experience, there's pretty much, I haven't come across a pot of paint that I can't spray through an airbrush. I know some are a little bit more tricky, some are a little bit more easy, but with a bit of experience, you can spray anything through an airbrush. So I do find that really no real manufacturer is a bad sort of paint to use. When it really comes down to it, me personally, I will use any paint so long as it's the exact match to whatever it is I'm spraying, because the one thing I hate to do is I hate to go off and get one paint, another paint, mix them together to get the exact color match that I'm after. I hate doing that because I don't find it very practical, because, you know, I could go off and sort of, I don't know, I could go off and do one aircraft with a certain camo scheme on it or something, and then I want to do another aircraft but I want to have the same camo scheme. I've got to go off and then sort of mix these paints up and sort of try and get that exact color again. Or if I'm spraying a model and I run out of the mixture I've made, I've then got to mech up another mixture to then spray on the same model, and it can sort of, you can have sort of off colors with that. So I, you know, again, coming back to it, really any manufacturer is good. I just prefer to just go with whatever is the best matching color. Next we have Widget Runner. Hopefully I pronounced that right. This guy's actually asking, where's your eye protection and respirators? Otherwise, great tutorial. I forgot which tutorial he was commenting on there. I have mentioned this before in the past. When it comes to me filming and using respirators and sort of safety stuff, it's quite impractical, really. I mean, for me to kind of be going off spraying a model, trying to teach you, talk you through it, and I've got a respirator over my face, it's kind of hard for you to hear me talk, and it's a bit sort of muffled and everything. So when it, for me to teach you, I do have to kind of like turn the extractor fans off and the respirators off, but really I'm only sort of doing a bit of spraying, and you might see me sort of cut away, and then I might show you some more spraying and cut away. Really, I've only got the camera on for a little bit, and then as soon as the camera goes off, you know, it's respirators, extractor fans, the whole shebang. You know, because you've got to think about the safety and everything and all that health and safety stuff. Here in the workshop, actually, I have designed this workshop to have an industrial size extractor fan in the ceiling, as well as right in front of me I've got that £200 extractor fan that you can get, what was it from now, off the top of my head, I think it was like airbrush.com or something. Really nice extractor fan. So that's basically the health and safety is just kind of, you know, use a bit of common sense. Obviously you guys out there should be using, you know, face masks and all that kind of stuff. Actually, when it comes to eye protection, I don't really find that I need to use it very often. I mean, there's not really stuff shooting off really when it comes to modeling. One thing that comes to mind is, do you know the metal rods? that you have where you might want to cut a bit of a metal rod off or something, and you sort of cut it, those things can really shoot off. I mean, yeah, put some eye protection on there, but I don't really normally find that you need eye protection. But yeah, just use some common sense, and just remember, I'm not using it because I'm filming, but once the camera's off, I am using it. Next we have Hyperfan. He says, how do you go on with the finishing models in the cabinets? Okay, the cabinet one being so close to your paint area. I think he's noticed my glass cabinet here with the models in, and he's basically going on about how do I kind of have any problems with spray dust and everything going into the cabinets and getting all my models all nasty. Really, I haven't actually had a problem, and that is really down to a good extractor fan system. I know with these glass cabinets, they do have little gaps inside them, so they do still get dust, and maybe once a year I'll go in there and I'll sort of brush them down. Again, there is a tips and tricks video on the Genessis Models website where I kind of show you how you sort of clean your models now and then. So even the glass cabinets, a little bit of a clean up now and then. Even if I had them up in the house and there wasn't near sort of spraying and anything, they would eventually sort of build up with dust and you'd need to clean them anyway. But generally, I do find as long as you've got a good extractor fan system, you can get rid of a lot of spray dust that goes around. The sort of the trick is not to have an extractor system that is, say, over the other side of the room, and then I'm spraying here, because by the time that's the dust has like gone over to the extractor fan system, it's basically settled down. You do want to make sure the extractor fan is right in front of you, like I've got here. I know you can't see it on camera, but it's right there, and I'm spraying, so the spray is going right into our extractor fan just here, up and out of the building, and that's basically sort of what you want. Just keep that in mind, and really, if you can fork out a bit of extra money, get more extractor fans, have one built into the room, absolutely perfect. Again, health and safety, as well as it keeps the dust down, because I think most of us out there do find that keeping our models in our sort of man cave is where we sort of keep them, because I know the wife doesn't like me putting them up in the house because it's scale modeling, you know what I mean. Doesn't really go with the decor. And then finally we have our final question here, which is, hi Bobby, how are you? I have a Hasegawa 148 scale F22 model. Now they require a certain tint to their camouflage. The model is going to be painted with Vallejo colours. If I mix a little bit of Vallejo metal medium in the colour, then do you think that that we can have that metallic tint? Right, so basically what it's on about is this stuff just here, which is actually quite cool. This is the Vallejo metal medium, right? Really cool stuff. It's a nice medium that you can mix with any paint pretty much. I mean, obviously do some testing, but mix it with any Vallejo paint and it gives it a nice sort of metallic tint to it, which for something like an F22 could work. I mean, to be honest with you, I haven't done it, so I'm not going to say it's going to work, but it could work, because it's going to give whatever grey sort of camo pattern you put on there, it's going to give it that sort of tint. There is another way of going about it, is basically go off, get any metallic colour you want, and you really thin it down, like a post shading, where, I don't know, you might want to go something like 5 or 10% paint to about 90 to 95% thinner. So what you end up with is a very thin down metallic colour, so it has really low coverage properties to it, so that you can get this really nice haze going on all over your F22, which could get you the same effect. However, when it comes to stuff like this, if I was to do an F22 today, I would go off and sort of go get one of my old kits. I normally have like a test kit normally. It's a good idea to have something like that, like a really cheap kit or a kit you're not bothered about, and use it as a test bed. Go get a wing, spray it up, maybe have one wing for using this metal medium, one wing for doing like a really thin down metallic paint, and sort of you know, just go through the spraying process and just see how it looks and see which ones you like the best, and sort of go from there. Always good to have a good test bed, sort of scrap bit of plastic lying around, model, something like that, to do those kind of things. But sadly, we have done all our questions, so I'm just going to basically leave you with, you know, get your questions in for next month. We've got on the forum, we've got a specific place on the forum for the monthly Q&A. Get your questions in there. That's the first place I will go to answer your questions. But you know, any emails that are sent to me, questions on YouTube, pretty much anywhere where I see a question, you know, I'll write them down on a piece of paper, well, print them off on a piece of paper and do the usual monthly Q&A. So if you want something answered, get in on the Q&A. And just remember, as was it Freezertron has already done, is you don't have to make it model related. If you want to ask me a personal question, go ahead. But sadly, that is the end of our Q&A for March. So hopefully you've enjoyed that. So until next time, my name's Bob Waldron. It's just Genesis Models, and I'll catch you later.